Welcome back. Now, on this edition of the news, we shift our focus to the other big story, a story that has fascinated everyone, a story that the world is looking at. What will happen in the U.S. presidential elections? Remember, the race to the White House has already intensified. This is Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump after Joe Biden decided to end his re-election campaign. Now, Democrats have questioned Biden's own ability to contest polls and handle the entire responsibilities for another 4 years. You had more than 4,000 delegates who gathered in Chicago to recognize Harris as the presidential candidate nominee from the party and a running mate, Tim Walz, for the post of the vice president in the upcoming 2024 presidential election. Now, President Joe Biden has wrapped up the convention's first day with a 50-minute long speech. Now, he actually has touched a lot of interesting issues. He goes to the entire timeline of his career. He hails Kamala Harris for her dedication to the country. Biden also took a dig at the Republican rival Donald Trump. He referred to him as a quote-unquote loser.
We've had one of the most extraordinary 4 years of progress ever, period. When I say we, I mean Kamala and me. I've made a lot of mistakes in my career, but I gave my best to you. For 50 years, like many of you, I've given my heart and soul to our nation. Donald Trump calls America a failing nation. No, I'm serious, but think about this. Think about this. He publicly says to the whole world, I'm going to say something outrageous, I know more foreign leaders by their first names and know them well than anybody alive, just because I'm so damn old. But I'm not joking. Think of the message he sends around the world when he talks about America being a failing nation. He says we're losing. He's the loser. He's dead wrong. America's winning, and the world's better off for it. America's more prosperous, and Americans are safer today than under Donald Trump. Trump continues to lie about crime in America, like everything else. Guess what? On his watch, the murder rate went up 30%, the biggest increase in history.
I wish my mother and Kamala's mother could see us. They would say, keep going. Shirley and Jerry would say, keep going. With faith in each other and joy in our hearts, let's send Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to the White House.
So you just heard Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton were the main speakers at this convention. But then also a moment came in where Vice President Kamala Harris makes an unscheduled appearance on stage to pay tribute to Biden. Listen in then to what she said.
Joe, thank you for your historic leadership, for your lifetime of service to our nation, and for all you will continue to do. We are forever grateful to you. And this November, we will come together and declare with one voice, as one people, we are moving forward. Optimism, hope, and faith.
Now, do remember in the race for the 2024 presidential polls, Kamala Harris's, in fact, her own position appears to have taken a lead. There is some kind of a competitive edge, is what people say, over the former president, Donald Trump. A lot of opinion polls here that have shown Harris leading by at least 2 to 3 points. She's expected to perform well in key battleground states like Nevada and also Georgia, which could be pivotal for the entire campaign. But then to secure a victory, she also needs to make a significant mark in a lot of other states. These are Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Since assuming office, you've also seen Harris, who's really garnered a lot of strong support from the minority communities, including the Black, the African voters, which is critical for her campaign strategy. That always has been the push. Now, her ability to attract those key demographics could prove essential in clinching that presidency. And to make more sense of what is expected, where is the battle poised, we have two very fine gentlemen joining us. One is our own dear Srinjoy, who's joining us from a news pit here to look at the big not just the global picture, the big India picture. We also have Kane Richard, who's joining us from the Voice of America. Srinjoy, with your permission, I want to take this quickly to Kane to understand what is happening, Kane, right away. A lot of these polls now have started giving at least a 2 to 3 point lead to Kamala Harris. What really has caused this? What is working in her favor right now?
Well, certainly Kamala Harris has energized Democratic voters throughout the country. The reason why the polling has shifted is because she has entered the race. Obviously, she's gotten a boost not just by replacing President Joe Biden on the top of the ticket, but also she's gaining that momentum by announcing her vice presidential running mate, Tim Walz. And it's also expected that this entire week at the Democratic National Convention here will also sort of buoy or boost her polling numbers as she comes out of this convention with some momentum as she heads out on the campaign trail to begin the final months of this campaign. And so Democratic voters are looking for a change. They're looking for that candidate who is going to not only be able to defeat the Republican nominee, former President Donald Trump, but also someone who energizes them and gets them out to vote. They want to support somebody who they feel that is the candidate for change, the person who motivates them all. And so that's important. Turnout will be key in this election in November.
And Kane, we were looking at these key states like Georgia, Nevada, North Carolina, Arizona. Do you believe that this is where you're looking at Kamala Harris already taking an edge? So has she already defeated Donald Trump in these states much before the actual polls take place?
Well, we have to remember that President Joe Biden won Georgia in the 2020 election by a very, very narrow margin.
Yes.
And her presence on this ticket is likely to perhaps help build some of the base that he made in 2020 with the voters there in Georgia. But polls are too close to be able to determine that this is actually going to be the outcome of the election. A lot of this depends on turnout. There is a lot of time between now and the November election in which things can occur. There's something that's known here in U.S. politics as the October surprise. There could be some pivotal event that shifts voter opinion or voter sentiment. Right now, the war in Gaza is weighing on voters' opinions. The economy here, while inflation is coming down, it's been high for a very long time. It's impacting a lot of voters in the way that they feel about the economy here. So there's a lot that can happen between now and November that can impact those polls and can change the way that voters feel. But it shows right now that at least Kamala Harris has sort of energized that voting base and will perhaps be able to make an impact in states like Georgia. Also, she's increasingly making a state like Florida competitive, certainly making Nevada competitive. And she has multiple options or multiple venues or multiple paths, I guess you could call that, to get to the White House. She can win certain states in the north like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. She can also win states in the south like Georgia, North Carolina, and obviously states in the Sun Belt, Arizona, Nevada. So she has really made the race competitive, but polling shows that it's too close to be able to determine whether or not she's been able to pull way ahead of Donald Trump.
Kane, I really like that word that you used, October surprise. And I'm sure Srinjoy will also have a take on this. We here in India have a surprise almost every day. You say a week is too long a time in Indian politics anyways. But that holds true for any election. Now, this election, not very long ago, people had given up hope. Ever since you've seen Biden exiting, then you saw that very unfortunate assassination attempt on Donald Trump. And when you still see him at these campaign rallies and when he's speaking, he's wearing that bandage over his ear. Do you think that is still a narrative, that is still a picture that people will remember till the hustings, or could things change?
Former President Trump has a book coming out in September called Save America, and the cover of that book actually shows the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. It's the famous picture in which he's holding his fist in the air. Obviously, there are people in which this is a present memory, and this is something that definitely shaped the trajectory of this campaign. But the news cycle has changed so rapidly, so fast, and so much since that occurrence. And so while it's certainly present, I'm sure, in everybody's mind here, it is something in which news events have sort of overtaken that as the last story. Obviously, having President Biden step out of the race, having Kamala Harris enter the race, having Tim Walz is now as her vice presidential running mate. All of these things have sort of occurred, and it's definitely changed, I think, the focus and the attention on what is the top story in the news cycle. But there are people who are still undecided. There are people out there that are independent voters. There are people out there that are waiting and seeing what happens over the next several months before they make a final determination about who they want to support. And those are really the key people who will determine the outcome of the election. While both Republicans and Democrats really need their energized base to ensure they get out and vote to support their candidate, the outcome of this election is going to wind up being the people who will vote not based on a party, but based on a preference as to how they feel and who they feel is going to do the best job. And those are those independent and non-aligned voters.
Interesting. I think these are important takeaways, Kane, that you get to us. Now, let me also get in the big India picture, the big national picture also. You know, Srinjoy, as we are looking at this, clearly New Delhi is closely looking at, is it going to be Trump coming back to power, or this is going to be Kamala Harris? Now, clearly you have both the Democrats and the Republicans standing for different things. The issue of immigration is something that still continues to be an irritant. When it comes to a lot of other deals about the economy, these are concerns even in the US's own quarter. How is New Delhi looking at this election? How significant this is? And Srinjoy, in your assessment, how has this election changed post the exit of Joe Biden?
It's obviously changed enormously. And it has to be said that Kamala Harris has actually done better than expected. The fact that Biden was down 3-4 points and now Kamala Harris is up 3 points is actually very significant, particularly in the blue wall states like Michigan, as Kane said, and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. So that has been a very positive development as far as the Democrats are concerned. But a 3-point lead historically does not entirely ensure victory. Because if you go back to, let's say, 1988, Michael Dukakis had a 17-point lead in the summer, and he lost by 8 points. And yet, the biggest mistake of that election was actually by George Bush. He got, of all people, Dan Quayle to be his vice presidential candidate. And yet he won as well as he did. So there are historical precedents which suggest very clearly that 2-3-point leads at this point is still a long way off. That's one. As far as India is concerned, everybody knows that Prime Minister Modi and President Trump get along very well. As Modi himself once said, ab ki sarkar, Trump sarkar and all that. But much more important than that is the fact that India and America have such a relationship now. It would have been unbelievable 25 years ago that regardless of who is President of America and who's Prime Minister of India, that relationship will be on an even keel.
Yes.
Now, for economic reasons, for strategic reasons, for political reasons, for a variety of reasons, at this point, the relationship between India and the United States is, as I think Biden himself has said, the most significant.
Yes.
Now, if that is so, then it doesn't really matter so much who is going to be president. Okay, if you have a better personal relationship, it helps the relationship between India and the United States by, let's say, 5% more. But overall, I see no change. Regardless of whether the Democrats come or the Republicans come, India and America will continue to be close friends.
All right, we are talking in August, gentlemen, and like Kane said, and I'm always going to remember this, the October surprise. We'll track what happens. Kane and Srinjoy, for the moment, gentlemen, thank you so much for adding perspective to what we know as we also quickly head into a break.
Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? Who will be ahead in the U.S. presidential race, and who will be the ghost for India? I'm in Chicago at the Convention Center with journalists gathering from all over the world. You'll get a ringside view of the U.S. presidential polls with me, Catherine Gibson. Live coverage on Voice of America and Times Now.